Hey guys, we'll talk about this industry and the way it works around techs being paid and stuff. So, what's pretty common is, say, like dealerships, I know are like this. A lot of shops are like this. They'll have guys where the tech is paid on what's called flat rate, and what that means is, so all shops we all use a national standard on with book time. We have several books that we use to compare hours, what they tell us how long each job should take, what you should quote to do the job or and charge for the job labor wise. And like I said, we're pretty scrutinous on these things. We have two or three of them that we'll compare sometime just to make sure that something, if something seems off, sometimes we'll look and make a call there before we quote a job. And a lot of places work like this, and the tech is paid on that system. So say somebody comes in for, say, brakes, and it pays, say it pays 2 hours to do brakes. The tech, no matter how long it takes him to do it, he gets paid 2 hours for that job. Okay. So if somebody comes in, they're like, oh, my car's making noise, I need to get it looked at, and tech looks at it, and he's looking, and he writes up a list of everything. Now, essentially, if the customer signs off on everything he finds, he's basically writing his own paycheck, right? And that to me is a conflict of interest, because you come down to the it comes to the problem of ethics. Is it ethical? And I'll tell you a little story about a guy I had working for me. This was a couple years ago, and he worked at some dealerships, and I'm not saying dealerships are the only ones that do this. It's like mechanic shops across the board. We all pretty much operate very similarly. I actually changed my strategy in the last 6 months, trying to get away from the flat rate thing, but I digress. So he came in, we talked. He's like, I got all this experience, and I'm ASC certified, and this and that. And I said, okay. So I hired him, and he came on board, and he worked. He worked for a couple months, and then he did an inspection on a car one day, and he turned the ticket in to the office. And Caitlin's looking at this thing. She's like, "This, there's a lot of stuff on here." And she came to me. She's like, "Can you just go look at this and make sure that this is right?" I said, "Okay." He still had the car on the rack, so I go out there. I'm looking at it with him. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at that, and then, there was a couple things just obvious. This is worn out. This is a safety concern, or whatever. Or this is going to create tire wear, or whatever. But there was a bunch of things on the list that I was looking at, and I'm like, "What's the problem with this?" He said, "Oh, well, it looks old, and boot's got a little tiny rip in it, and it was just like I just kept going through it, and I was scrutinizing it, and there was one point, and I still, like I said, this was a couple years ago, and I still remember this. I said, "Man, what about this?" He's like, "I'm trying to make you some money, man." And at that point, right then, I knew. I was like, I hired the wrong guy, because here's the problem with recommending a bunch of stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, if the customer comes in, they were like, "Look, if anything is even questionable, let's just do it all." And a lot of times when we find stuff, we'll take pictures and videos and whatnot, or we'll show the customer what's going on. And I right then I knew. I was like, man. So I adjusted the ticket, and we did the things that I deemed that was necessary. You got to be careful with that, because there's a lot of people that don't know. If somebody makes a recommendation for all this stuff, they're like, "Oh, what's going to happen if I don't do it?" And I get asked that every day. Well, what can happen? And then I don't want to tell somebody, "Oh, you're fine, right off into the sunset," and then something happened. From a liability standpoint, I can't do that, but I can tell you this is obviously a problem. This needs to be taken care of. And you know, he he only worked with us several months, and it didn't work out, and I let him go, and behind some other things that were going on, and but it came down to, like, I couldn't trust him, and I liked him as a person, and I let him go. He got all pissed off at me, but that's business, I guess. But the flat rate thing, it's like I said, it's fundamentally, in my opinion, it's a conflict of interest. Not everybody is ethical, human beings, and just everybody's different, and I wanted to get away from that. So I got one guy left on flat rate, and it's not that I don't trust the other guys. The way I'm set up now works better for my guys and the client and the shop. It's just, it takes a lot of the anxiety away from my staff around making a living. So they're not quoting a bunch of unnecessary stuff, and the main thing was, I don't want them rushing through jobs. I don't want them working too fast, trying to make the book time so they can get on the next job and make some money, because obviously you wind up with quality issues when you do something like, it's just, you're talking about people's livelihood, and everybody's got bills and kids and all this, and they want to make money, and they're trying to work efficiently, and people make mistakes when they get in a hurry. And one of the things here I'm just not going to compromise on is quality in the work that we do. And so, like I said, I got one guy on flat rate now, and it's because I know him personally. I've known him for a very long time, and he's a good dude, and I trust him, and he's okay. That's what he wants to do. So until he comes to me one day and wants to talk about changing his pay scale, if he wants to do that, fine. But and then all my other guys, they're happy with the way that they're set up pay wise. Everybody here is a little bit different, but it comes down to ethics. What's ethical? And we work together here all the time around discussing, well, look at this, what do you think about that? And we make a collective decision around, and we talk to the client, and we're like, we show them, and we have a conversation with them. What's your plan with this vehicle long term, and to try to help them make the best decision for them, with what they need. And this is something that is a problem in the industry, and it's no secret. Mechanic shops have a bad rap for doing stuff like this, or just ripping people off. And then that one thing is, getting ripped off, that's subjective. People come here, we've had people tell us, oh, this is too high, you're ripping people off. And then the next person comes in for the exact same job, and they're like, oh, this was a great price. So it's, all I can do is know that I'm doing the right thing. That, that way the shop makes money, my guys make money, my client gets what they need, and it makes sense. The repair makes sense for them, and then I can sleep at night. And it takes effort. It takes a lot of communication between everybody here and with the customer. It takes effort to fine-tune the treatment plan, if you want to call it that, and get, make sure the money's right, and it's ethical. And I wanted to talk about this because this is something I think about daily. And the other part of it is, like, people say, oh, mechanic shop ripped me off. They did a study about this back decades ago, and I think there was like a big, I think it was like federally looked at. And what they found was, after they did an investigation, And basically what it came down to was just competency. It wasn't that the shops were trying to rip people off. It's just that they were spending the customer's money on things that wasn't going to fix the car. They didn't know. It's just, they just didn't know. And I mean, that's a little bit better, I guess, because the ill intent isn't there. But that's another thing. Like when we do diagnostic work here, I mean, a lot of times we're working for free. I mean, we have a diagnostic initial fee, but I'll say a lot of times we're eating time on trying to figure out what's wrong with these cars, because we want to try to be sure before we make a call and spend the client's money. And in my mind, that's what it takes. That's beyond ethical, trying to do the right thing. And it's just one of those things in this industry that it's just part of it. And it's something that we do every day. And I wish sometimes, a lot of times, that it was a little bit easier and cut and dry and straightforward. Some of these weird problems that we get coming here, but a lot of times it's not. And I'm not doing this because this was my ultimate dream, to be a mechanic on a mechanic shop. I'm doing this because I'm pretty good at it, and I needed something to do. And so I said, well, okay, let's do this. And then all this other stuff comes along with it that I didn't think about initially, because I never worked at a dealership or a shop. I always did my own thing, worked on my own stuff for my entire life. And all my buddies did, my dad did, and I'm a lifetime technical guy. And but I just want to kind of talk about this area, space in this industry, and what we go through it daily to try to make the right calls. And I guess everybody should be doing that. I'm not going to say it's going above and beyond, because it shouldn't be that. It should be standard. But a lot of we pay attention to the customer feedback, what our clients tell us, and a lot of times they tell us that we did a good job, and that they were happy with what we did for them and how we did it, and our communication, and and a lot of times they tell us that I didn't get this, or I haven't had this type of experience with a place like this in a long time. And that's unfortunate. I wish that the industry would turn around and be more transparent and professional, but unfortunately it's just not regulated very closely. And there are some guys out there that I watch their videos and stuff. They have shops all around the country, and they talk about this problem, and they're trying to turn the industry around with their content. And there's a reason I like to watch their stuff, because I think similarly in that way, that I want to build something that people trust, and that everybody here can make a decent living, and then I can sleep at night. We've had some. I'm the kind of person that, like, for instance, we've had some jobs like from years ago that went sideways, and it came to a head, and the customer wasn't happy, and this, that. And I still think about those things from years ago, and that's something that it drives me to try to figure out, because I investigate all these little problems that we have, and it leads me to try to figure out, why did this happen? What happened? Was it our fault? And sometimes it was our fault. And sometimes it's parts quality, or it's just some people are just unrealistic. And but the times that it was our fault, you know, we tried to make it right, and we it's just something that weighs on me, and I I remember those things and harp on those things because it leads us in a positive direction. I feel like, okay, we're not going to sell these tires anymore because 2 years ago we sold a set and this happened, and then it was a bad deal for everybody. So we're just not going to sell them anymore, or parts, or just anything like that. So we're constantly making adjustments and changes here to try to fine tune what we do. And we, like I said, it's not easy sometimes, you know. Somebody, because we get people bring us stuff that it's been to 3 or 4 other shops already, and God knows what they've done with the car. It's all kind of different parts on them, and then we're coming in and we're like, here we go again, you know. So I don't want to. This video is already getting long. I knew this was going to be a longer one, but we just hope that this insight, a little bit of insight, kind of informs some people on how this industry works, and pretty much why, probably got a lot to do with why it has the reputation that it does. And that's unfortunate, but you know, we're just one little shop in South Mississippi, and you know, I can't change the whole industry, but I have control over what happens here, and we try to do the best with what we have, and the right thing with the customer, and be ethical as far as what we know and what we can see and do. Y'all have a good one.